So Shaun, thanks very much for joining us. Can you just explain to those watching it what your role is, please?
Yeah, my name is Shaun and I'm Head of Sport at United Learning. We are a multi-academy trust which incorporates about 80 schools around the country, primary schools, secondary schools and about 12 or 13 independent schools as well. And my job is to support all of the heads of PE and directors of sport in those schools to do the best job possible they can in and through PE and sport.
Fantastic. So I guess that almost leads nicely into the first question. What's on the minds of those staff that you talk about? And I know that we quite often rugby clubs will go in and they'll talk about rugby being the main drive, but what's sort of the best way for rugby clubs to engage with directors of sport, PE staff, do you think?
Definitely to think more about a holistic contribution to a child's education. So that, yes, there's definitely kind of rugby specific content and skills and experience, which is really welcome and valued by schools, but that needs to fit in within the bigger picture of what schools' ambitions are for their young people. Particularly where we are at the moment, I'm speaking in September 2021, and need to upskill young people again with physical competencies, with elements of physical fitness and endurance and stamina, but really that love of being physically active and for it to become a habit. So if a rugby club coming into school can help in the physical activity, but also through rugby, learning skills and competencies, the soft skills and non-cognitive skills, as well as the technical skills, then they would be making a really good contribution to the life of the school.
Fantastic. And do you think that rugby clubs need to do anything to tailor their offer to enable them to do that?
I think it would be helpful if rugby clubs certainly didn't present themselves as being all about the 15-a-side game and about rugby being a sport for all, about rugby being able to be accessible by all young people, and also a game that is about handling, running and invasion, rather than too much emphasis on the contact aspect of the game, which is right for some people and some young people get an awful lot from that. But in the main, to capture the joy of physical activity and of playing sports with friends for fun, rugby can do a lot better than simply focus on the 15-side game, in my opinion.
Fantastic. And are there other things that rugby clubs and rugby can do to help support sort of the wider school, young leaders, staff, sort of other sort of benefits that you would associate from a link?
Yes, definitely. And from our experience, where it works really well is to embed young leaders, as you exampled there. But also, if any of the people that are key to that rugby club, and that might be a coach or an official in some way, but those link people with the school, if they are able to offer something additional, like some mentoring, like sitting in a classroom with a couple of students that would be beneficial to, just being that beyond a rugby coach or being beyond a rugby club official, to be that person for whom a young person can depend on, can turn to, can be another non-teaching responsible adult, can be really valuable. And we've seen that happen with other activities that we use strategically in a few of our schools. To just be seen as a person of a technical coaching deliverer, I think is potentially missing a trick with some of the highly skilled people that you've got in the rugby clubs around the country.
Fantastic. And thinking across sort of the schools that you work with, what are the minimum standards they would be expecting from some of those rugby coaches that might go in and deliver curriculum, extracurricular activity?
Usually an NGB level 2. It could be level 1, depending on whether that is direct coaching or kind of peer coaching, if you like. But normally it would be a level 2. Most schools will ask people to complete a DBS anyway, so it doesn't matter if you've got one. That would be unique to that setting. The school would ask you to do their own anyway. But it's about the quality of the person as well. So even if you have those qualifications and that paperwork, it's about your qualities as an individual and your approach to young people that's as important as any qualifications you may have.
So Shaun, what's one of the barriers or some of the barriers you've noticed to coaches working in schools?
The biggest barrier usually is the time of day. And whilst having an additional person during the school day can be helpful, Predominantly where schools benefit most from getting some support from community coaches is in the extracurricular setting. So that kind of time between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock perhaps. And part of the problem, of course, is that many people are doing their own work in those times. So it's been a perennial challenge because coaching, unless you're a professional coach and it's your full-time job, it's really challenging to get support from community clubs in that 3 to 5 p.m. window. So anything that community clubs can do to support schools in that particular time frame, I think would be a real asset to any school provision.
Fantastic. And last question from us, Shaun, is, remember you mentioned before that you started as a sort of a teacher within a PE setting, know that staff are really busy, especially at the moment. What tips have you got for rugby clubs who are trying to get hold of a member of a PE department to help form a link?
To speak to them initially to find out what's the best way of communicating with them. So don't assume that email is always best. Some PE teachers will find little time during the course of the week to get on email. It might be that they are happy and would prefer to have a text message or to set up a WhatsApp link or whatever. So I guess engage with them in the first instance by letting them know what you can offer and saying, you know, and asking the question, what's the best way of keeping in touch? Because you're right, they're extremely busy, but also I don't think there's a one-size answer to that question that would suit every PE teacher around the country. Speak to them, find out what works best for them, and take it from there.